A fiery and cantankerous force of nature who is widely seen as one of the most influential drummers to have ever lived, Ginger Baker became known for his unique brand of jazz-inflected drumming, primarily thanks to his exploits with psychedelic blues rock band Cream. In this video, I delve into why he's often mentioned as one of the best rock drummers ever. Peter Edward Baker was born in South London in 1939 and was nicknamed Ginger due to his flaming red hair. Entering his teens, Baker began playing the drums and cites some jazz greats like Art Blakey, Elvin Jones, Baby Dobbs, and Max Roach as big influences. As a keen lover of jazz, it's no surprise that many aspects of his playing style are jazz influenced. He himself was once quoted as saying, "I never considered myself a rock and roller, I was always a jazzer." In my eyes, this is one of the key reasons Ginger Baker is seen as so influential. He pushed the boundaries of what the drums could sound like in a rock group thanks to his deep interest in jazz. A good starting point to look at what specifically about Baker's playing was inspired by jazz is this interview in which he goes over the basics of his early drumming education and how he'd spend time learning and experimenting with different rudiments.
Well, first of all, I learned all the rudiments and things. I don't know whether I can play them all now. But then I just used to play solos. I used to just sit on the drum kit, and I used quite a lot of them, flam triplets, that sort of thing. You want me to play them?
Please.
At this time of day.
And a variation of that would presumably depend on which drums you played it on.
Because that, you know, if you're playing them on tom-toms, you get two sounds out of it. Four-stroke rough, which is that. Yeah, but you're playing them on around the drum, you get.
Now, flam triplets and four-stroke roughs are not exclusively jazz rudiments, and Baker probably wasn't the only drummer utilizing them at the time, but they became his trademark and were fundamental to his style. By deploying them often in his playing within the context of a popular rock outfit like Cream, meant that he sounded very different to other contemporary drummers. And because Cream was a trio, it meant Baker had a lot of space to be expressive and colorful with his playing, much like a drummer in a jazz trio. Another element of Baker's style that was inspired by jazz is quite a surprising one. Baker is often credited as one of the early pioneers of double bass drumming in rock.
This happened when I went to see the Duke Ellington band early in 1966 in England. I've been a big fan of Duke Ellington since I was at school. And Sam Woodyard was playing with Duke at this particular time, playing two bass drums. See, Duke Ellington invented two bass drums. He wasn't a drummer, but he invented it. Dave Black, Louis Belson, any drummer that played with Duke Ellington played a two bass drum kit, and that's where I first saw it.
There were people who may have played double bass before, but nobody played them as a musical separate part the way Ginger Baker did. What he played on the kick drums were unique patterns that shifted across what he was doing over the top. Other people played double kick drum, but it was usually just because their one foot wasn't fast enough, you know, and just speed things up. And I thought that was just one more step. You really now have four limbs to express two levels of playing. That blew me away.
In this last interview, Alex Van Halen mentions Baker's impressive limb independence and how that dexterity allowed him to create these unique and nuanced patterns between hands and feet that few other drummers at the time could pull off. Yet another reason he stood out from the rest. One more reason to add to that list is the influence of Afrobeat. In the 60s, Baker met Fela Kuti, an icon of the genre, and the two would later play together on Kuti's lauded album Live. Baker's interest in West African music was so deep he actually moved there in the 70s where he set up a studio. This is another example of his general musical curiosity in things that are new and different, which helped him develop his playing and approach to drumming. Although the rudiments and jazz chops, the double bass, the African rhythms were all key components that made up Baker's style, I think this interview in particular captures one of his best qualities, which is his approach to what the drums as an instrument can be.
You've got so many different sounds on a drum kit, depending on how you hit it, where you hit it, you know, and it's using these sounds in the right place that makes the music better. And this is what Baby Dodds did, and what Max Roach does, what Elvin does, what Art Blakey did, what everybody does. You make the other guys sound good. You make the other guys sound good. That's your gig.
This quote is a great segue to another layer of Baker's ingenuity. You make the other guys sound good, that's your gig. In other words, how can the drums best serve the greater sound of the group? The group in question here, of course, are Cream, which were founded in 1966 and were able to establish an enduring legacy with only 4 albums released in 4 years. They appeared on Rolling Stone and VH1's lists for 100 greatest artists of all time. They sold over 15 million records worldwide, with their third release, Wheels of Fire, being certified platinum. So what part did Baker play in the band's rise to fame? Well, the first case study I wanted to discuss is probably their most famous song, Sunshine of Your Love, from their second album, Disraeli Gears. This track was the band's first chart-topping single and is remembered largely thanks to its catchy lead guitar riff. But Baker's choices on the drums bring to mind that quote about making the other guys sound good. There are a few things to point out about the drums in the verse of this track. Firstly, the emphasis is on beats 1 and 3 as opposed to the more traditional rock standard of 2 and 4, which make up a backbeat. This rhythmically gives the piece its own unique feel, creating tension between the drums and the riff played by the bass and guitar. Secondly, Baker doesn't use any cymbals. He's using only toms and the bass drum to drive the groove rather than a hi-hat or ride. This choice, similar to the first one, makes this track stand out against most other popular rock tracks of the time. These are choices made to intentionally push genre standards and seek to innovate. The second Cream track I wanted to discuss is Toad from their debut album Fresh Cream. It'd be criminal to discuss Ginger Baker and not mention Toad in some way.
One of the greatest things that I ever heard on drums was Toad. I'd never heard anything as fluid before. It was. You know, in drums, you have one hit at a time. It was a very percussive, very short duration note, but yet somehow everything kind of flowed and it rolled.
The track begins with the trio ripping into a trademark blues rock groove, but soon it becomes very sparse, with Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton giving space for Baker to perform a 4-minute drum solo. Now, drum solos were very common in jazz at the time, but the one Baker plays on Toad is allegedly one of the earliest recorded by a rock group, and another great example of Baker's love of jazz leading to innovation. The solo perfectly captures Baker's style as he deploys all manner of rudiments across his kit, creating complex and evolving patterns between hands and feet, repeating phrases and licks before cueing his bandmates back in to the end of the song. Ginger Baker is undoubtedly among the most important rock drummers in history. He showcased the potential a drum kit can have in a rock group and influenced its trajectory going forward by being a known influence to John Bonham, Phil Collins, Neil Peart, Stuart Copeland, Tommy Aldridge, Bill Bruford, and more. I wanted to end on this quote by the great Neil Peart talking about Ginger Baker. His playing was revolutionary, extrovert, primal, and inventive. He set the bar for what rock drumming could be. Every rock drummer since has been influenced in some way by Ginger, even if they don't know it. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching to the end. Please do drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to support the channel, you can find a link to my Ko-fi page where you can donate in the description. Let me know what you think of Ginger Baker and if there are any other drummers you'd like me to cover. Thanks.